Greg. After that, we'll have a portion for the press to ask questions. We'll kick it off with Director Maxidon.
All right, well, thank you, Miss Emily, and good morning, everyone. Just want to thank everybody for being here today. This is a great occasion, a good time to celebrate for us today. Today, we're proud to announce the signing of an official operating agreement between the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency and Appalachian Bear Rescue. When TWRA was founded 75 years ago, black bears in Tennessee were actually nearly wiped out. And this was due to market hunting and overexploitation. It was really a grim picture for bears in Tennessee. But thanks to decades of dedicated habitat work, smart conservation strategies, strong regulations, and partnerships like this one, we now estimate that more than 6,000 black bears live across the state. And that number continues to grow and expand. As part of those conservation efforts, TWRA regulates and permits wildlife rehabilitation facilities like the Appalachian Bear Rescue to care for orphan and injured black bear cubs. Our partnership with ABR has spanned nearly 30 years and helped countless bears return to the wild. But like any long-term relationship, we faced our share of challenges, and last year was a tough one for us. In 2023 and 2024, the emergence of disease at the facility raised serious concerns about the risk to the wild bear populations. Sadly, 13 of those bears had to be euthanized to prevent a broader outbreak. As difficult as that decision was, we paused placements at ABR, and this was not as a punishment, but because we believed it was necessary to protect the overall black bear population in Tennessee. That said, we never lost sight of the value of this partnership, and over the past 6 months, TWRA and ABR teams have worked hard to rebuild and improve the process. Today, we're proud to share that we've reached an official operating agreement, one that sets clear expectations for both sides, strengthens the best practices of rehabilitation and sanitation, and builds transparency with the public. We're excited to turn the page and move forward stronger, more united, and more committed than ever before for black bears in Tennessee. And now I'd like to introduce ABR's Interim Executive Director, Greg Greco. Greg has been a strong partner. He's been a great leader at getting us to this process today. I want to say thank you to all the ABR team, thank you to the board, and especially want to say thank you to Greg for being able to get us here. So Greg, we'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Greg. All right, thank you, Director Maxidon. Guys, I'm just happy to be here. I didn't prepare anything to say. I just do these things off the cuff. So first, I want to thank everyone for being here. There's some folks here that helped start ABR over 30 years ago. For those who don't know, 1996 was when ABR got its first bear, but in 1991 was when the charter first started for ABR to become something. So I was born in 1992. So there's people here older than me, that started this before I was born, right? And I can't tell you how grateful I am to have them here to help carry on their legacy. This was a tough time, as Director Maxidon said. There was a lot of things that people didn't know, how it was going to go, and there was, some strained relationships. There was some heartache. There were some followers and donors of ours who were, really upset. There was some anger, right? And on both sides, probably, right? But I can't tell you how pleased I am to be here today. I'm super excited to get this agreement done and to carry on that legacy that people who helped teach me, my whole career in wildlife management has been taught by the people who helped start ABR. And like Director Maxidon said, rehabilitation is important, for our bears, but not because it is, how we keep the bear population at 6,000. It's because if I can get people to care about one orphan cub, then I can get them to care about all bears. And I get them to care about all bears for that orphan cub, then I get them to care about bear habitat. And if I get people to care about bear habitat, then I got them to caring about all kinds of other animals' habitat who people maybe don't think about as much, right? And that's why this is worth doing. So thank you guys. Excited to get this underway, and I'll move on to the next bit.
You can take that with you if you want. I'm going to go ahead and relocate these over here. So at this time, we'll now open the floor for questions. To kick us off, I know both directors have already introduced themselves. Jay and Brandon, if y'all will both introduce yourselves as well so that the reporters have your names on camera.
I'm Brandon Ware, the Deputy Director of Field Operations for TWRA.
Jay Clark, ABR board member, biology professor, and director of sustainability at Maryville College.
At this time, the floor is open.
Hi, I'm Melanie Tucker with the Daily Times. So you said you signed the agreement, so tell me, can you give details? When are there going to be the first bears there? How many are going to be able to be there? Those kind of questions.
All right, so thank you. Yes, ma'am. This is the first step, was getting the agreement signed. The next step is a new enclosure. So we're working with ABR, with Director Greco and the team there. Once a new enclosure is established, and as early as that can happen, ABR can accept bears at that time. And we're also looking at pens 1 through 4. There's some biosecurity measures that need to be put in place before they can accept bears in those pens, but once that occurs, they'll be able to accept bears in those pens as well.
So you don't know what the earliest date is?
I'm going to let Greg comment on what he thinks maybe the earliest time frame to get a new enclosure built is.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So right now we're looking at building 2 new enclosures, one first and then the other. So the first new enclosure is already kind of prepped. We've been working to have an area to build a new enclosure actually in the past already. And we probably need about $200,000 to get that enclosure built to where it can receive bears. The second enclosure would take more money, probably closer to $320,000 because of the land work needed to build that. These are 1 acre enclosures. They're double layered chain link. There's a lot of regulations on how these enclosures need to be built to hold bears. And in the agreement, we're going to be limited to 3 bears per half acre and up to 6 bears per whole acre, and no more than 6 bears in a group together. So 2 new enclosures will allow us to accept up to 12 bears in those new enclosures. Our old enclosures, once we meet the biosecurity recommendations and perform some studies on that, could hold another 10 to 12 bears. They're about an acre each as well for those 4 enclosures divided into 2 half-acre sections. So once we get all the enclosures, the new ones built and the other ones operational, we'd be able to accept up to 24 bears based on the agreement.
Evan Lasik, WVLT. I was just wondering, what is in this agreement to make sure that something like what happened in November doesn't happen again in the future?
Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah.
So there's really 3 new things in this agreement, and one is new sanitation practices or more sanitation that's going to occur there. As Director Greco mentioned, less bears in the enclosures, and so we're saying 3 per half acre unless there's an extenuating circumstance that would keep a family unit together to create more. And then the next, probably most important thing in there is what weight the bears will leave the facility. We're looking at a 40-pound weight around August the 1st to be able to leave the facility. Those are the main 3 things that are in there.
I'm Shay Smith with WVIR. In May, we reported that ABR and TWRA potentially might not work together for several months, if not a year. What changed within the last 2 months that brought the 2 organizations together to work this out?
Well, I think you said y'all reported that. That was one thing that was reported, but we've been trying to work together. There was just some sanitation practices there that we wanted to make sure that were in place. The first step, again, was to get an agreement signed. Unfortunately, we didn't have that before, and so trying to get an agreement in place and to figure out what protocols needed to be put in place for pens 1 through 4. That was what we were waiting on to get going, moving forward.
If I can add to that, that was an interview I provided to Olivia with WVIR, and I said clearly in that interview that it might be a year, could be a year, and it was all entirely dependent upon the negotiations. That happens with headlines, but I do want to be clear, we have said all along that it was entirely dependent upon the course of these negotiations, as well as the seasonality of bears. So it's well known that in the spring is when those bears' cubs are being more active, and so the work that's going on can influence the influx and the return of those bears into the wild.
Did the public reach out to either ABR or TWRA? Whenever those 3 very small bear cubs were released a couple of months ago, we got several calls and emails of people very unhappy that they were so young looking and so small and they were released. Did the public reach out to either of the agencies directly?
Yes, ma'am. I think the answer is definitely yes for us, and Greg, I think you'd say yes as well.
Yeah, we got numerous calls about that. A lot of heartbroken people out there, right? And I'll be honest, I told a lot of them, hey, there's nothing I can do right now, and that's partially on me, right? It's partially on my organization. We made some decisions, when the bears got sick, to work towards a solution that was going to take a lot of time, right? And this is 7 months now, maybe a little longer since that happened, and here we are at part of that solution, but we still have probably 6 months ahead of us before we're receiving bears again. If I get those enclosures built really quickly, maybe sooner, but cubs don't really come in the fall and winter as much. Sometimes a couple, maybe a handful, but usually that spring, early summer's when we get cubs. So probably looking at the beginning of next year before we're receiving them again, and that's the honest truth I had to tell people, right? And they didn't like that answer, but it's a better answer than saying cubs will never be able to be rehabilitated again, right? That's what people didn't want to hear. So that those 3 cubs, is unfortunate for everyone involved. I'm sure no one enjoyed, doing that, but the alternative was put them down or let them go, right? And no one wants to make the decision. If you've worked with bears, putting them down becomes part of the job, but no one enjoys it, So letting them go was the next best alternative.
And I'll add a piece to that. We follow a matrix, and as Director Greco just mentioned, there's 3 things that can happen. You can either euthanize that bear, you can put that bear back out in the wild, or you can foster that bear. Typically, fostering only happens whenever they're in the den or shortly coming out of the den. And looking at these bears, they were very healthy bears. There's been 4 of those that's occurred with. So typically what we look at is if a mother's been missing for 36 hours, that's when we choose to do that. One of these bears has actually been sighted since. There's a video of that bear. So that bear was actually healthy 10 days later, looking good. There was somebody that took a video of that bear.
Evan Lacey, WVLT. Both of your agencies are dedicated to wildlife management, and you clearly both had differing views of what was best for these bears going forward. How important was it to find common ground in this agreement to make sure that it was going to be back up and operating?
So ABR has been a great partner for over 30 years. This partnership is going to continue. They're great at what they do. We're very thankful for the board, very thankful for Director Greco and the team, and I think we were all looking for solutions to be able to continue this partnership and this relationship.
And I'll second that. We've got to give a big shout out to our board of directors. Actually, Jay Clark sitting here. You wouldn't know it, but he and Brandon used to work with bears, and they actually did the first study on bear cubs released from ABR back in, was it 2001?
97.
97. I was 5 years old back when they did the first study on bear cubs released from ABR.
He was my technician.
And without the 2 of them and their relationship, I don't know if we'd be sitting here today with such an agreeable document in front of us. So I got to give a big shout out to him and the rest of our board members for working hard on that. It was tough, no doubt about it. It was a lot of negotiating, a lot of back and forth, and without their diligence, I don't think we'd be sitting here today.
So how much money have you spent today getting everything ready to accept bears again?
On renovations, which were needed to be done already, we've probably spent $250,000 between staff time and materials. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of the renovations we did at our facility already were more than past due. We've had a lot of bears for a very long period of time, and I worked for the Park Service for the last 10 years, and I was bringing more cubs to ABR every year, and I was watching ABR get more cubs. I was taking more cubs from ABR every year. I know those pens had bears upon bears in them year after year and didn't have time for the maintenance, right? So some of the structures just needed to be replaced anyway. That was, a bill we were going to have to foot either way. There were a lot of practices that we just implemented that should have been in place before, but because of the number of bears, they weren't able to do, right? Just burning and other types of land management practices were unable to be performed because of the sheer number of bears coming to ABR. Part of that's really due to human conflict in this area, right? And I can't speak to it enough that what ABR does is it gives bears who are victims of human conflict a second chance. Because the more roadkill we have, the more bear conflict we have where bears get euthanized or killed, in the act of conflict, the more cubs come to ABR. And if we don't have more space, we can't handle that influx of bear cubs, and we can't perform our mission correctly. We're the best at this in the whole country. I have people calling me from all over. They rehab bear cubs in other states, and they're like, oh, how do you guys do what you do? How do you rehab them in these big enclosures? We have to have them in cages. I'm very proud of that, and I think the folks who are here that helped start this 30 years ago are very proud of what it's become, and what it's going to be in the future is going to be even better.
So how many months was it that you had bears continuously? I knew that at one time, but
I believe up until the last bears left in January, it was over 2 years. I'd have to look at, I think it was like 26 months or 28 months that there were bears continuously on site. Now, sometimes it may have only been 2 or 3 bears, but there were still bears continuously, which throws a wrench into operations and being able to do the things that are necessary to manage the land properly. Jay, you want to say something?
Oh, I'm good.
Any other questions from members of the press?
I think I got one. Just one more for me is just how is that when these enclosures are being built, is there going to be a check-in commonly to see if there's going to be problems? How do those kind of get approved? And then if something like a sickness were to happen, what is the protocol going forward?
Oh, I don't know.
So yes, we've got things in the agreement actually for that. So once the enclosure's built, we'll have a team that'll come out, meet with Greg and his team, and take a look at everything. And then if there is another disease outbreak, we would just assess that at that time. Each disease could be different. What's going on could be different at that time. So we would take a team and assess that and figure out what direction we would need at that time to move forward.
All right, if there's no other questions, just want to wrap up here by saying thank you to all of the attendees who have joined us. At this time, we now have an official ceremonial signing of the agreement. Guys, if you'll flip to that yellow tab. And this is a copy of the agreement that our directors are going to sign together.
Sorry, I saved sweat me. Alright.
Yeah, you can switch. Yeah, I'm trade.
We'll switch a room.
Let's talk about what else. Change this one more time.
What is 21?
Yep.
My signatures.
Had to practice that a lot for
Yeah,
autograph day in college.
I want to make sure it all gets. There's no auto pen here.
That's right.
All right.
There you go.
They want to take a picture. Jokes.
Flash them for the camera, man. That's a shot. That concludes our program. ABR has been so gracious with snacks and refreshments inside if you've not had a chance to enjoy it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, guys. Also, I got a campaign launch coming. I hope everyone here will cover it. We'll announce it tomorrow. So we're gonna need to raise a lot of money, as you heard. So I appreciate your coverage of that in the coming days.
Greg, they want some pictures because all these guys.
Oh, yeah, sure.
They
Yeah.
probably start next year. They got to go through and get it all.